Hello, my little acorn crop. Today we're going to talk about magic eggs since it's Easter. Alright, so the first egg we're going to talk about is the Druid Egg, the Angium. And the reason this egg seemed to be sought after was it was used in court cases because the Druids were the lawyers and judges of their people. There's really no reasoning in the lore for this thing, nor do they necessarily know really what it was. The lore says that it was it was obtained on the certain moon, and it had to be during summer, and it had to be when the snakes came together and writhed around, because it's said to be snake secretions and spittle. It sounds like snake jizz to me. And the snakes are said to fling this up in the air, and you had to catch it before it hit the ground, and then you had to flee, presumably by horseback, because the snakes would pursue you. I'm not sure why anyone would want this thing, but it was a relic of high regard, or an item of high regard, and, you know, pretty difficult to obtain, and no one really knows what it was. Some historians think it's a petrified sea urchin because it's knobby, and one would think that it's a knobby thing since it wouldn't, you wouldn't think it'd be smooth since it's made of snake jizz. So, snake secretions. So another historian thought that it was whelk egg casings. So the interesting thing on that is that whelk is a sea snail, but that would be found on a shore. It would be an in-between thing, so the Celts would have found that to be particularly sacred, because things found in liminal spaces, or liminal spaces themselves, were typically very sacred because it's not one thing and it's not the other. So, such as if you're in the doorway of a room, you're not necessarily in the room you were just in, and you're not necessarily in the room that you're going into. So that's a very sacred thing to the Celts. So I think the whelk egg casing is a really interesting theory. I also saw in the course of doing research for this an adder stone, which is said to be smooth with a hole in it. I think that's a later invention. It's a later addition to the lore. However, the thing about stones with holes in them is you're supposed to be able to see the fairy world, potentially the future as well, or the past, because if you're looking into the fairy realm, who knows what you're going to see. I have to wonder personally if a druid egg wasn't something more like lava stone, because a druid egg is supposed to float, and these stones could potentially, certain types could float. And I don't know if you can see the hole. There's the hole in there. I can see it. I don't know if you can. Anyway, there we go. There we go. You can see it. So I have to wonder if the druid egg was something like this, a rough hewn stone with a hole in it naturally. I couldn't say because I wasn't there. So the next egg-related thing we're going to talk about is Ostara. And most pagans will tell you that Ostara and Easter are very similar, if not the same thing, in the dyeing of the eggs and the bunnies and the whole thing. And Ostara is very Germanic, and we conveniently have some Germanic diaspora in this country, known as the Pennsylvania Dutch. I know, it doesn't make sense, but it's actually a mispronunciation of Deitsch, so it's Pennsylvania Deitsch, or more correctly, the Pennsylvania German-speaking people. And historically, the lore of those people, which is really interesting because I know that you would think that they're all hardcore Christian because they're Mennonites and they're Amish, but just like with Catholics, if you chip away at their belief system, you'll find a pagan foundation. And in this pagan foundation, you will find a myth about how the world was initially two colors, black and white. And the goddesses were not happy with this, so they came up with another color, gray, but they needed a way to distribute this color. So they asked the goldfinch, which you will know as the Distlefink if you're from that area, to spread the color gray, which the bird did. It flew across the sky and spread gray, so then the world was black, white, and gray, which that was cool and all, but the Casas just had an idea that there was something more. So they managed to bring colors together, and they employed this time the bunny to distribute the color, so to speak. And this is where we get all the colors in the world, and more specifically, the colored eggs. And the last eggs that we're going to talk about are the Pisankas, or Pisanski eggs. Pisanskis are Polish, and these were given to me by a friend who practiced Polish paganism. And these eggs were thought to be endowed with magical properties, and they were thought to bring a plentiful harvest and good luck. And the name Pisanki comes from the Polish word pisak, meaning to write. And the designs were usually very specific and had very specific meanings. So they're pretty detailed, as you can tell. And there is a divination set created off of the designs off these eggs known as Zenaki, though I don't think it's very common. And I've also seen where you roll these eggs, or an egg with runes on it, to see what your future is going to be, future husband, future whatever it is that you're looking for. With that, my friends, I hope if you celebrate Easter, if you celebrate Easter, you have a good one. And if you celebrate Ostara, happy Ostara. And good night, America, wherever you are.